Late autumn of 1999, and the conference room on the third floor of Jersey Film's production office in Los Angeles smelled like cold coffee and nervous ambition. Outside the window, the California sun was doing what it always did, shining indifferently on dreams being made and broken in equal measure. Steven Soderbergh sat at the head of the long mahogany table, his wire-rimmed glasses perched on his nose. A stack of headshots and resumes spread before him like evidence in a trial he wasn't sure he wanted to win. At 46 years old, Soderbergh had already cemented his reputation as one of the most uncompromising directors in Hollywood, the man who had burst onto the scene with sex, lies, and videotape and proceeded to make exactly the films he wanted to make. Box office expectations be damned. He didn't do movie stars. He did actors. He did truth. He did stories that mattered. And now Danny DeVito, sitting across from him with that familiar producer's glint in his eye, was suggesting something that made Soderbergh's stomach turn. Julia Roberts for the lead role in Erin Brockovich, the name hung in the air like cigarette smoke, impossible to ignore. Julia Roberts, America's sweetheart. The woman with the $100 million smile and the tabloid history that followed her like a shadow. Soderbergh picked up her headshot, that famous face, those impossible lips, those eyes that had launched 1,000 magazine covers and felt nothing but skepticism. "She's too big," he said finally, dropping the photo back onto the pile. "Too famous, too sparkly." What he didn't say, but everyone in that room understood, was the rest of it. Too difficult. The rumors from the Hook set still circulated through Hollywood like a virus that wouldn't die. Steven Spielberg himself, the most powerful director in the industry, had allegedly nicknamed her Tinkerhell. She had been labeled difficult, demanding, unprofessional. She was damaged goods wrapped in a pretty package, and Steven Soderbergh had no interest in pretty packages. He wanted real. He wanted raw. He wanted someone who could disappear into the role of a struggling single mother who takes on a California power company and wins. He wanted an actor, not a movie star. Danny DeVito leaned back in his chair, a knowing smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Just meet with her, Steve. One meeting. What's the worst that could happen? If you want to discover how one phone call from an unexpected ally changed Julia Roberts' destiny, and how a director who doubted everything about her became the architect of her greatest triumphs stay until the end, this story will change how you see second chances forever. To understand why Soderbergh's reluctance cuts so deep, you have to understand where Julia Roberts stood at that moment. She was 31 years old and ancient by Hollywood's brutal standards for leading ladies, and, despite her fame, she had never been taken seriously as an actress. Her Oscar nomination for Steel Magnolias had been dismissed as a fluke. Pretty Woman had trapped her in a gilded cage of romantic comedies. Hollywood saw her as a product, not an artist. My Best Friend's Wedding in Notting Hill proved she could still open films. But critics continued to damn her with faint praise. And underneath all the success, there was a quiet desperation that Julia rarely allowed anyone to see. She knew about the Tinkerhell nickname, the whispered warnings passed between directors. She was one or two flops away from being written off entirely. The phone call came on a Tuesday evening from the last person Steven Soderbergh expected. Tom Hanks, two-time Oscar winner, America's most beloved actor, was on the line. And he wanted to talk about Julia Roberts. The two men had known each other for years, and Soderbergh respected Hanks in a way he respected few people in Hollywood. "I heard you're looking at Julia for the Brockovich project," Hanks said. Soderbergh sighed. "Danny's pushing hard for her." "I'm not convinced." There was a pause. "Steve, the Julia Roberts you think you know isn't the real Julia Roberts. The stuff from Hook, the difficult label-its, not the whole story. She was going through hell during that production. She cracked. Anyone would have." Hanks paused again. "I've seen her when she's focused. There's something real beneath all the movie star stuff. She just needs someone to believe in her enough to let her show it." Soderbergh agreed to one meeting. Just one. He told himself it was a courtesy to Danny DeVito, a favor to Tom Hanks, a way to definitively close the door so he could move on to other casting options. He expected to sit across from the glossy magazine version of Julia Roberts' all charm and deflection and carefully constructed star persona. What he got instead was something he never anticipated. She arrived at his office without an entourage, without makeup, without the armor of celebrity that most stars wore like a second skin. She was wearing jeans and a simple white t-shirt, her famous hair pulled back in an unremarkable ponytail. She looked, Soderbergh would later recall, like someone who had nothing left to hide and nothing left to prove. They sat across from each other in his cluttered office, and Soderbergh did what he always did. He asked the question that mattered. "Why do you want this role?" Julia didn't answer immediately. She looked down at her hands, and when she looked up again, there was something in her eyes that Soderbergh recognized. Hunger. Not the desperate hunger of ambition, but the deeper hunger of someone who needed to be seen for who they really were. "Because I'm tired," she said finally. "I'm tired of being the smile. I'm tired of being the laugh. I'm tired of playing women who exist only to fall in love and look pretty while they're doing it." Erin Brockovich is angry. She's messy. She's fighting against a system that wants to crush her, and she refuses to be crushed. She's real. Julia leaned forward, and Soderbergh saw something shift in her expression, the movie star mask falling away, to reveal something rawer underneath. "I know what they say about me. I know I'm not your first choice, or your fifth choice, or probably even your 10th choice. But I need this role, Stephen. Not for my career, for my sanity. I need to prove to myself more than anyone that I'm more than what they've made me." Soderbergh didn't say yes that day. He went home and watched her films, not the famous ones, but the smaller moments, the scenes where she let something genuine slip through the commercial machinery. He called Tom Hanks back. "You might be right about her," he admitted, "but this role requires her to be completely unglamorous. No makeup tricks, no flattering lighting. Can she handle that? Can her ego handle that?" Hanks laughed. "Her ego isn't what you think it is, Steve. Give her the chance. I promise you won't regret it." The decision was made 3 days later. Julia Roberts would play Erin Brockovich, but Soderbergh attached conditions that would have sent most A-list actresses running. Minimal makeup, unflattering costumes, complete submission to his directorial vision. No star treatment, no special accommodations, no entourage on set. Julia agreed to everything without hesitation. On the first day of filming, she arrived on set, transformed in a way that stunned everyone who knew her. The megawatt smile was gone, replaced by Erin's defensive scowl. The elegant posture had been replaced by something rougher, more aggressive. She had gained weight for the role, changed her walk, altered her voice. She looked like a woman who had been beaten down by life and refused to stay down. And when Soderbergh called action, something magical happened. The camera, which had always loved Julia Roberts for her beauty, now loved her for something deeper. It captured the fire in her eyes, the barely contained rage, the desperate hope of a woman fighting for her children and her dignity against impossible odds. The real Erin Brockovich visited the set during the second week of filming. Julia approached her with visible nervousness, the biggest movie star in the world, anxious about meeting the woman she was portraying. They talked for hours about Erin's life, her struggles, her children. Erin watched the dailies and wept. "That's me," she said, gripping Julia's hand. "You found me?" What developed between them was rare, genuine friendship built on mutual respect. Erin saw in Julia a kindred spirit, another woman underestimated and dismissed. Julia saw in Erin everything she wanted to be, fearless, authentic, unapologetically herself. "I was wrong about her," Soderbergh admitted midway through production. "She's not a movie star pretending to be an actress. She's an actress who got trapped being a movie star, and I think we just set her free." The film wrapped in spring 2000, and by summer, the buzz was deafening. Critics who had dismissed Julia Roberts for a decade were suddenly reconsidering everything. When the film premiered, it was an immediate sensation, a fierce, unglamorous performance that demanded respect. Words like revelation and transformation filled every review, and through it all, Julia maintained a calm that masked the hurricane underneath. She wanted that Oscar. She had wanted it since Steel Magnolias, since Pretty Woman made her famous but not respected. She wanted it for validation proof that she was more than what the industry had reduced her to. The nominations were announced on a cold February morning. Julia Roberts, Best Actress. Also nominated, Ellen Burstyn, Joan Allen, Juliette Binoche, Laura Linney. Serious actresses the Academy usually preferred over Hollywood glamour girls. Oscar night, March 25, 2001. The Shrine Auditorium glittered with more concentrated fame per square foot than anywhere else on Earth. Outside, thousands of fans pressed against barricades. their screams creating a wall of sound that could be heard even through the building's thick walls. Inside, the air was thick with perfume, ambition, and barely concealed anxiety. Julia Roberts sat in the audience wearing a vintage Valentino gown, black with white trim, elegant and understated, a far cry from the flashy choices of her younger years. Beside her sat her boyfriend, Benjamin Bratt, his hand occasionally squeezing hers in reassurance. But in her mind, she was alone with her fear and her hope. The ceremony dragged on with agonizing slowness. The technical awards, the musical performances, the Lifetime Achievement tributes. Julia smiled when cameras swept past her, that famous smile doing its job one more time. But her heart was pounding so hard she was certain the microphones could pick it up. When Russell Crowe walked to the podium to present Best Actress, the entire auditorium seemed to hold its breath. Julia watched his face, searching for a clue, and found nothing. He opened the envelope with deliberate slowness. Was he enjoying this moment of power? Or was it just her imagination stretching time into eternity? Then he smiled that crooked, knowing smile and said the words that would change everything. Julia Roberts, Erin Brockovich. The next few seconds existed outside of time. Julia's hands flew to her face. Her body shook with emotion that couldn't be contained. Tears she had been holding back for months, years, perhaps spilled down her cheeks. She rose from her seat and began the longest walk of her life down the aisle. Up the stairs, toward a golden statue that represented everything she had fought for. When she reached the microphone, she was laughing and crying simultaneously, her famous composure completely shattered. The speech that followed would become legendary not for its eloquence, but for its beautiful, chaotic authenticity. She rambled. She forgot names. She told the conductor to sit down because she had things to say. "Sir, you're doing a great job, but you're so quick with that stick," she said, and the audience roared with laughter. She thanked everyone she could think of and probably forgot half the people she should have mentioned. She was a mess. A glorious, genuine, utterly human mess. "I love the world," she declared at one point, throwing her arms wide, and somehow it didn't sound ridiculous. It sounded like exactly what someone should say when their impossible dream finally comes true. Somewhere in the audience, Tom Hanks was applauding with tears in his eyes, knowing that his single phone call had helped make this moment possible. Steven Soderbergh, the man who hadn't wanted to hire her, was nodding with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had been part of something important. And in living rooms across America, millions of people who had grown up with Julia Roberts were crying along with her. Understanding somehow that this wasn't just an actress winning a trophy, yet was a woman finally being seen. The years that followed proved the Oscar was no fluke. Julia Roberts had been transformed not just in the eyes of the industry, but in her own understanding of what she was capable of. She chose roles with more care, worked with directors who challenged her, balanced commercial appeal with artistic credibility. The difficult label faded, replaced by a reputation for professionalism. The connections formed during Erin Brockovich endured her friendship with the real Erin, collaborations with Soderbergh on the Ocean's franchise, her bond with Tom Hanks. But more important was what Julia discovered about herself. The greatest performance wasn't about pretending to be someone else. It was about finding parts of yourself that connect to another person's truth. Erin's anger was Julia's anger. Erin's determination was Julia's determination. Erin's victory was Julia's victory. Today, more than 2 decades later, that Oscar sits in Julia Roberts' home, a golden reminder of the night everything changed. The lesson of her journey is not just about talent triumphing over doubt. It's about the power of one person believing in another when the world has written them off. Tom Hanks didn't owe Julia anything. He simply saw something true in her that others had stopped looking for and took the time to say so. Sometimes that's all it takes. One voice, one phone call, one person willing to say, "Give her a chance." Soderbergh listened. Julia delivered. And Hollywood learned that the most dangerous thing you can do is underestimate a woman with something to prove. That famous smile still lights up screens around the world. But now you know there's steel underneath. You know, America's sweetheart earned that title not by being sweet, but by being strong enough to demand the respect she deserved. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that second chances can change everything, please give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for more untold Hollywood stories. Share it with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to prove the doubters wrong. And leave a comment telling us who believed in you when no one else did. We read every single comment, and your story might inspire someone who needs it today. Thank you for staying until the end. You're part of something special now.